The Blue Lotus is the fifth adventure of Tintin by Hergé. Released weekly between August 1934 and October 1935, it was first published in full in 1936 and then redrawn and colorized in 1946. When Georges René decided the next volume of the heroic young Belgian and his little white terrier would take place in the Eastern Orient, he was advised not to use stereotypes as a source of comedy, as he had done with the earlier comics. He was put in touch with Chong-Chen, a student at a university in Belgium, who taught the cartoonist about various aspects of culture in China. The two became friends, and as gratitude for helping him, Hergé put Chang into the Blue Lotus story. In 1991, the comic was adapted into a two-part episode of The Adventures of Tintin. How faithful was this adaptation? Let's spot the differences. Continuing on from where Cigars of the Pharaoh ended, Tintin is a guest of the Maharaja of Gaya Pajama. The story begins with our hero trying to decipher a Morse code message, followed by the Maharaja introducing Tintin to a fakir, who not only demonstrates his ability to withstand tremendous pain, but also his soothsaying, as he foretells that the young man will soon come into contact with a devious man with yellow skin and glasses, who we will soon learn to be Mitsuhirato. The adaptation replaced all this with the little prince playing with Snowy.
Oops! Look out!
A man from China comes to speak with Tintin, but is immediately shot with a dart injecting him with the madness poison. With only Shanghai and Mitsuhirato as clues, Tintin decides he must go to China to find who wanted to talk with him and why. In the comic, after packing to leave, Tintin cannot find Snowy and thinks he must have been dog-napped, but he soon discovers that he accidentally locked Snowy inside his travelling trunk. Gibson does not appear in the episode. He is an aggressive loudmouth American who pops up in many pages of the comic as a minor antagonist, and thanks to being pals with Dawson, the chief of police, has the young Belgian arrested twice. While his removal was probably done for time, it is possible his racist remarks are what sealed his absence.
They will stop at nothing.
Who are they?
I am sorry, but I can tell you very little. Only that you must leave Shanghai.
Mitsuhirato tells Tintin he was tricked into coming to China, and for the Maharaja's safety, and his own, must return to India immediately. Back at his hotel, he is sent a disguise and given an address where he shall meet a man who can help him. That night he finds a man, later identified as Didi, armed with a sword, who insists he must behead Tintin. The young man subdues the madman by punching him in the face, whereas in the comic he jumps on one end of a table, causing the other end to smack Didi on the chin. The reason Tintin's little companion doesn't accompany him to the meeting with Didi is because in the comics Snowy was drugged by tea.
He's gone!
On a ship bound back for India, Tintin and Snowy are kidnapped via rope and chloroform and thrown overboard in a wooden box. They wake up to find they are at the home of Wang Chen-Yee, who is the head of an organization trying to stop a drug cartel, of which Mitsuhirato is the leader. Mr. Wang tells Tintin that the letter he received begging him to return to the palace at once was not actually sent by the Maharaja, as it claims to be. In the comic, Tintin was never sent a telegram, and this rather minor mistake by Hergé was fixed for the adaptation. During this conversation, Didi, Mr. Wang's son and a victim of Mitsuhirato's madness poison, almost cuts off Snowy's head, but the dog is saved just in time.
Uda, Location, Tuesday, storm, and traps. Top 9, Gurkha's tea. Take the first 2 letters of each word and you get Blue Lotus. 10 tonight. What's the Blue Lotus?
The Blue Lotus is an opium den in the original story, as evident by the men shown inhaling it. But in the episode, for obviously more child-friendly reasons, it is referred to as a club, and while the mattresses are still on the floor, the stoned men are absent.
5,000. And another 5,000 when the job is done.
Tintin is spotted spying on Mitsuhirato and his men blowing up the railway line when he falls into a pile of junk. In the comic, Tintin exposes himself simply by sneezing. Also, the fabrication of Chinese bandits attacking a train and not only robbing but murdering all the Japanese passengers, which is reported around the world, does not happen in the episode.
You should have taken my advice, Mr. Tintin, and left Shanghai.
Not only are you a drug dealer, but you're a terrorist too, huh?
Tintin pretends to go mad after being injected with what Mitsuhirato thought was the madness poison. He does so because he can feel no effects of the drug, but acts the part so the villain will let the lunatic loose. In the episode, the waiter at the Blue Lotus winks, which is why the young reporter starts pretending. The man in black is an ally of Mr. Wang, yet in the comic he is just another henchman of Mitsuhirato.
You were injected with color water, which I substituted myself.
That was very clever of you, Mr. Lee.
In the same scene, Tintin stops Mitsuhirato, who still thinks he is now mad, from shooting Snowy by throwing a rubbish bin on him. This plays completely differently in the original story, as in that Mitsuhirato discovers the poison is not the poison and attempts to stab Tintin, but his blade has also been switched. So the villain gets what he deserves. Despite this change in the episode, the waiter claims Tintin's punch really KO'd Mitsuhirato, yet Tintin did not touch him.
Don't ever mess with Action Man!
Tintin learns about Professor Fang while hiding from police in a cinema. In the episode, it is Mr. Wang who suggests that the professor may be able to help concoct an antidote for Didi's madness.
Have you caught Tintin yet? No, sir. Not yet. Then I'd suggest you look harder, Colonel. Yes, sir. Sir! What do you want?
Tintin tricks the checkpoint sentries by pretending he has spotted something in the sky above them. In the episode, he runs towards the armed guards, claiming that something is about to crash, which succeeds in temporarily baffling the men. The largest section of the comic missing from the adaptation is 7.5 pages. Beginning when Tintin learns Professor Fang has been kidnapped and ending with his journey to Hukao, in it Tintin meets Rastapopoulos, who claims to have just visited the professor. Tintin gets arrested for the 100th time, refuses to cooperate with Mitsuhirato, and escapes execution thanks to Mr. Wang.
What's going on?
There's a flood up ahead. It's washed out the line.
Looks like we're walking, Snowy.
After Tintin saves Chong-Chen from drowning in a flood, the two compare how each other's countries are perceived by the other. Chang's reasons for accompanying Tintin on his dangerous mission is that he is an orphan, and the flood has destroyed the orphanage he lived in. In the original story, the boy just says that his parents are lost and does not specify how long it has been since they died, leaving open the interpretation that they both just drowned in the flood.
It is said, it is easy to break one branch alone, but two together is much stronger.
Mitsuhirato tells Dawson that he will forget about the debt he owes him if the corrupt police chief brings in detectives from Europe to arrest Tintin on suspicion of kidnapping Professor Fang.
Don't look now, Thompson, but I think we've been spotted.
Detectives Thompson and Thompson attempt to hand Tintin over to the police in Hukao, but one of them has lost the warrant giving them the authority to do so. Luckily, Chang replaced the paperwork for one claiming the two are insane, but in the comic he left it on the spot the Thompson showed it to Tintin, which could have resulted in it blowing away in the wind, or being destroyed by a passing animal.
This is outrageous! We protest! We protest this outrage!
When Tintin gets shot by a fake photographer, he claims to be unharmed, only his arm is a little sore from where the bullet grazed it. In the comic, although his arm is still said to be grazed, it is shown to be bleeding, and for a few pages Tintin has his arm in a sling.
How would you like to be photographed with your own camera?
While waiting for the train to leave Hukao, Tintin and Chang encounter Thompson and Thompson, resulting in both detectives breaking their noses. This short and very funny scene was sadly not added to the episode.
Nanking Road! It's an emergency!
Go find yourself a taxi, Sonny. This is a private car.
Hey! Come back here! You can't do this!
Tintin overhears Mitsuhirato tell his henchmen to go to Mr. Wang's home and bring him to their hideout. The adaptation adds Tintin getting held up, to ensure he doesn't arrive until after the Wang family is abducted.
Did you really think I would fall for such an obvious trick, Tintin?
You've made a mistake! I don't know what you're talking about!
Maybe this will refresh your memory.
No! Yo!
The villains think they have caught Tintin by tricking him, but it turns out he and Chang tricked them. While fleeing arrest, Rastapopoulos not only leads Tintin and Chang to the kidnapped Professor Fang, but he literally runs into the Thompsons. This does not happen in the comic, as Rastapopoulos does not attempt to run away. Furthermore, the reasons why the detectives are there, and how they seemingly know movie producer Rastapopoulos is the villain behind the opium smuggling, is not explained.
Excuse us, please. Tintin, we came to congratulate you.
Everything you said checked out at headquarters. They'll be behind bars for a long time.
The final noteworthy alteration is that news of Mitsuhirato's suicide was not included in the adaptation.
There is a rainbow in my heart. I weep because Tintin is going, but the sun shines because I have a new mother and father.